Hello my beautiful magical beings, it is Dragon Slayer 15 here, and today guys, we are going to be starting Kirishima X Listener. This is the Hanahaki AU, and this is a continuation of Kaminari X Listener. The title is not too far gone. Without further ado, let's get into this, shall we? 6 months had passed since the rooftop incident, as it was known around the school, and that day, even the media got involved. You were all over the news. You, however, were nowhere to be found. Efforts to try and find you had failed, but that didn't stop Kirishima from continuing to look for you. He had been looking for you every day that he could, and in every place he could think of, but to no avail. You had just slipped through his fingers, and he couldn't stop thinking about you. He couldn't even focus in class, he was so distracted, and his grades began to slip more than usual. Miss Raizawa told him that if he didn't get them fixed, he would be suspended. Even though he tried to fix them and tried to focus in class as much as possible, he just couldn't. One day, he was outside training with Bakugo and wasn't paying attention and got the wind knocked out of him. He collapsed on all fours, coughing and choking, trying to breathe. Bakugo rolled his dark red eyes and said with a scoff, "Why are you so distracted today, dumb hair?" he said, looking down at Kirishima sternly. Kirishima looked up at him and glared. "What? I'm just asking." Kirishima sat down in the grass, trying to catch his breath. "It's nothing. I'm fine." Bakugo rolled his eyes again. Sure. This is because of Listener, isn't it?" he said matter-of-factly. Kirishima glared at him again. "Hey, I'm just being honest," Bakugo said, shrugging. "You know that they gave up looking for them a long time ago." Kirishima nodded silently. He didn't really want to accept the fact that you were gone. So, he stood up and started walking back to the dorms. "Hey, where are you going?" Bakugo said, "Back to the dorms." "See you later," Kirishima said, and continued to walk. "Why are you still looking for them?" Bakugo wondered. "They're probably dead by now," he mumbled as he returned to his training. Kirishima walked into his room and flopped down onto his bed. He was thinking about what Bakugo had said to him. They had given up, but what could that have meant? You weren't... No, they're not dead, he thought to himself, shaking his head. He didn't want to think about that. You had to be alive, right? He was ripped from his thoughts by a sudden tightness in his chest. He gasped in surprise, but he felt his breath being taken away. What was happening? He started to have a coughing fit. He coughed harder and harder until something came up into his hand. He looked at what it was in confusion. Then, with a sudden realization, he dropped it on the ground. They were flower petals, the exact same shade as your eyes. He stared at them, tears welling up in his eyes. He was overcome with a flood of emotions. Relief, fear, anxiety. They were too much for him to handle, and he sunk to his knees and began to sob. You were alive. He knew you had to be alive if this was the reason. He had Hanahaki disease, but he didn't care. All he knew was that you were alive, and that you were okay. He cried for what seemed like ages. Then when he finished, he looked at his clock. It had only passed by 45 minutes. He stood, flopped down onto his bed, exhausted. He slept for the rest of the day. When the sun rose the next morning, he didn't want to get up. But he did. He was anxious. How was he going to hide this from everyone? But the truth is, he didn't really have to hide too much of it. The school day went on without many major problems until the afternoon classes. The minute Kirishima and his classmates walked into Mr. Aizawa's classroom, the sound of a bell rang through the halls. Villain attack. Everyone who was allowed to fight, ran to get on their hero costumes and sprinted outside as fast as they could. As soon as Kirishima got outside, he saw the familiar faces of Tomura Shigaraki, Himiko Toga, Dabi, and Kurogiri standing inside the school's barrier. How had they gotten past? Shigaraki took one look at Kirishima and pointed at him. Kurogiri opened up a warp gate just behind him. Kirishima dodged it, but not in enough time to dodge the second one that Kurogiri had brought up. He fell inside and Kurogiri closed it. Kirishima looked around. He was now inside a dark, almost movie theater-looking building. There was a bar with red stools, but nothing much else in the room. Suddenly, the four other villains had appeared behind him. He tried to fight them, but somehow one of them knocked him out. He woke up sometime later, dazed and confused. Where am I? He thought, looking around. He was in the same place, just tied to a chair. He looked down at his restraints. Were those vines? They were itching. It hurt. He struggled to get out of them. He heard someone clear their throat at the back end of the room. He turned and saw a hooded figure. Then, stepping into the light, he recognized Shigaraki's blue hair. "What do you want from me?" he demanded. We want to know something. Are you the Kirishima that our little pet has been talking about?" Shigaraki said with a devilish grin. "What are you talking about? Who would..." A sudden realization hit him. They had you. They must have had you. Where are they? What did you do to them? Shigaraki said, wagging a finger at him. You answer my question first. Then I'll answer yours. Kirishima nodded slowly. Yes. And? What is that to you? Give them back. We have a little riddle for you. A riddle? You're not the one to give out riddles, Shigaraki. Shigaraki laughed. Well, I thought I needed a change of pace, that's all. Well, here it is. I remain dormant on bitterly cold days, but at the first sight of love, I welcome the sun's rays. I bloom and grow, and for a while you stay stable. But soon my buds overflow, and your feelings are fatal. What's the answer? If you figure it out, I'll let you go. Kirishima thought wildly. What? What is this supposed to mean? But he had to figure it out. They had you somewhere. He just didn't know where. Then, after some thinking, the idea came to him. Hanahaki disease. Shigaraki looked at him, confused, but then annoyed. I knew he shouldn't have trusted them. That stupid riddle. Well, Dabi, bring them out. Wait, were they actually gonna give them to him? You to him? Dabi walked out of a small door in the back of the room and disappeared down a dark hallway for a few minutes. Then later he came back through, dragging what looked to be you behind him. Kirishima took a closer look. It was you. But how? You were skin and bone. Your ribs showing, your wrists as thin as a pencil. Every part of you looked sick, frail, and on the verge of death. Dabi walked up and threw you to the ground in front of him. You looked up at Kirishima, but you couldn't speak. You were too tired. Shigaraki walked up and placed his hand on the restraints, careful not to touch Kirishima's arm. The restraints shriveled up and faded away into dust. Kirishima bolted up, scooped you up in his arms, and ran out the door as fast as he could. He ran a little ways down the street and around a small corner before setting you down on the pavement. "Are you okay?" he said. Of course, that was a stupid question, but he had to ask. You shook your head weakly. You were so tired. Just wanted to go back to sleep. You feel your eyelids getting heavier and heavier. Kirishima tapped your cheek a little. Hey, no. Stay awake, okay? We're gonna get you back. You'll be fine. Kirishima pulled out his phone and called Bakugo. Within about 10 minutes, a bunch of heroes and pros came around the corner. They arrested the other 4 inside and took you to the hospital, where you remained for about 3 weeks. Once you gained enough weight to go back, you went back, but it wasn't the same. Everyone was so distant, even some of your closest classmates. But it didn't matter. You were home. One day, walking through the hall, you bumped into 2 very familiar people. Kaminari and Jiro? You stood there speechless. They weren't dead? That's impossible. You threw them off the roof. You averted their eyes and sprinted down the hallway, rage coursing through your veins. You thought you had gotten rid of them. What was their problem? Why couldn't they have just stayed dead? Hopefully, your cohorts would get out of jail soon. You had something big planned, and you wished the best of luck to the heroes. 'Cause you are with the villains now. And guys, that is it for part 3 of this series. If you guys liked, please like, comment, and subscribe. I love you guys so much. I will make a part 4, please. Believe me. Again, I love you guys so much, and I hope you have the best day. Bye-bye!